One of the very strange contradictions of social media is that while you're getting more and more and more people involved, you would think that would expose us to all kinds of fresh ideas and open our minds and make us more tolerant, when actually there's a lot of evidence that the opposite is happening. It's called homophony, and all it means is sort of birds of a feather, that we like to go seek out people who look and sound and feel just like us. Even though there are a cajillion people out on social media, we somehow find people, and through no accident, we declare what we're interested in. And we find people who are interested in what we're interested in. So, good thing, right? I mean, it reinforces passions and it builds a close-knit community. Well, in one sense, yes. But on the other, the downside of homophily is we really aren't exposed to things at random or serendipity. We really reinforce our own biases. And so when you think about it as communications people, how do you deal with that? You see the evidence of this all the time. The polarization of political arguments, the polarization of nearly everything. Everything feels like it's live or die. I hate you or I love you. And so as communications professionals, how do we cope with homophily? Well, one thing is that you have to respect it. You have to understand it. You're not going to change it. And so if we're going to go talk to people, for example, Dove, and they want to talk to people, perhaps in the past they would look at traditional segmentation, traditional demographics. Not so much anymore. Now you're looking into sort of tribes of mind rather than tribes of blood. And as a tribe of mind, meaning what I'm interested in, what Facebook groups I belong to, and what blogs I subscribe to, say a lot about me and my interests beyond Dove's products. And so the cool thing for us now as we look to social media is how we weave ourselves into the fabric of people's lives without being so explicit and overt as just talking about our clients' products. So if we're Dove, and we say it's perhaps Dove soap, then maybe we're talking to soccer moms, maybe we're talking to gardeners, maybe we're talking to people with a passion for horseback riding. It's no longer as literal and as ham-handed as just saying, look, here's soap, love it. It is really getting into the conversation of people through their passions, through their homophily. So look it up, Homophily. It's a really interesting effect that is driving everything in social media right now. The tremendous value that we can bring to clients when we've had a lot of media experience in our own right goes beyond pitching stories, way beyond pitching stories, which can be quite transactional. But actually, what happens is a kind of blink. It's a kind of pattern recognition. If you've spent a long time in the media business, in the news business in particular, then you begin to understand, as a matter of pattern recognition, what comes next, what comes next, what comes next. So if you're talking about a big unfolding story, a complicated story, or a major crisis, a tremendous value we can bring beyond just trying to fight defense and maybe try to bridge to something a little better than the crisis at hand, is to actually help the client understand what comes next. What will be the second day? What will be the 15th day angle of the story? And how can you get way out in front of it? I think another part of that is, if we look to that as just a tiny sliver of strength for us, is how we bring people into our relationships with clients who are not necessarily from PR to begin with, whether they're from news and media, or maybe they're scientists or academics. And this is tremendous value for the client. One of the tremendous torrents that is being unleashed by social media is the notion of content. Everybody, it's on everybody's lips. We need content. We're going to be creating content. You have clients, PR agencies saying we are going to be content creators. In the future, we are all content creators. What do they mean by that? And what really is content? I think we have to be very careful that we don't denigrate the idea of content or cheapen it in some way. Content really is something of value, something fresh, something with a new point of view, something worth talking about, something worth passing along. And so as we go to create content on our own behalf or for our clients, let's make sure we have something to say. And that's immutable. That will never change. Unless you're an expert in something, unless you have something to say that the world has not already heard, that's not really content. That's noise. And another, at the risk of sounding like an old Andy Rooney complaining about word choices, the word curate, which has crept into social media and now also is on everybody's lips. Now, if you think about curate in the old world sense of a museum, this was a person who's a deep, deep expert in one area. The curator would be the expert in art, or probably in some subset of art, maybe say Middle Eastern art, or maybe 15th century Italian art. And in curating it, they would identify, they would authenticate, and they would pull it all together to tell a story about this period in history through their deep knowledge of this sliver of art and history. That's a curator. But today, we use curate to mean sometimes we aggregate, sometimes we point to something, sometimes we rip things off, and we call it curating. So let's be careful not to cheapen the term of curating either. It doesn't mean we don't curate. Indeed, we do sometimes. What's the difference between a curator and somebody who merely aggregates and points to other things? We have a point of view, and you have a deep expertise in the topic that you're aggregating or that you're pointing to, and you add the point of view to that for added value. So with social media, and with blogs, and with the 24/7 news cycles, we're up against this all the time, the notion of responding in real time. And in fact, we've seen if we do not respond in real time, others will respond on our behalf. And when they do so, they may do it inaccurately, or they may make outright lies, or just create wild new rumors and speculation. So we're torn, aren't we? We're torn between feeling that we need to get it right and take the time to come up with a solid, sound, consistent messaging structure, particularly if we're a big multinational company spread around the world. And we're torn between that and responding immediately, because if we don't respond immediately, that vacuum is going to be filled with lies and allegations and speculations. So what do you do? And the answer is, unfortunately, you have to do both. And you can't duck and you can't wait. What you have to do is you have to answer the call by saying, I hear you, I'm here. This is what I know so far. Let me give you a caveat. I don't know enough to give you a considered response yet, but you've got my attention. I'm going to be right back at you. If you don't at least engage from the beginning, then you do open that vacuum, which can be very dangerous in social media. When you do respond, this means that you're responding in waves of iterations. Rather than waiting till you got everybody together on everything just right, it's a kind of transparency where you're saying to them, here's what I know so far, but some of this could be inaccurate. In the past, that might have been unacceptable. Right now, it's what people demand. So it's a completely different approach than our clients might have been used to in the past, when they would want to take the time to create an architecture and orchestrate a very consistent response. That would be the old sort of world of a proscenium stage, where we wanted to get our lines right before the curtain opened. Now, we're sitting next to each other on stools in a pub, and we're saying, this is what I know, and I won't BS you on it. And I need some help over here, and I'm not sure about this, and I'm worried about that. And you actually gain strength through that little bit of honesty and vulnerability.